Good morning. It's the Celtic Way morning briefing with just a day to go until the start of the league season against Hearts tomorrow night. A strange time for a opening fixture, isn't it? Saturday evening, don't recall that. But yeah, tough fixture to open. Sean and Alison, and I suppose made a bit tougher given the fact that Celtic are going into it off the back of a European defeat against Michelin. So it's hardly a confidence booster, and Tynecastle a typically tough place to go, although it won't be at full capacity. It's a huge game, and coming with it this week are more transfer links. The heaviest one has been Joe Hart, so we'll kick off with a chat about Joe and what he might or might not bring to the role at Celtic, of the goalkeeping role at Celtic, that I think needs fixed, maybe depending on your opinion, as a matter of priority or just as a minimal improvement. Where do you stand on this, Alison?
I think it's a matter of priority. I think the uncertainty between both goalkeepers, I think both look very nervous when they play. I think and I think it spreads an unease through the rest of the team. I think you saw it on Wednesday night, just prior to Midtjylland levelling the tie when the ball squirmed through Scott Bain. I think it just has a sense of spreading this anxiety through the people in front of him. I think it's definitely a matter of urgency that a goalkeeper comes in and that there's a settled back four before you get too deep into the season. I think Joe Hart was linked this time last season too. And I think finances were maybe just a bit prohibitive to the move, and I think he wanted to try and stay in England. He's obviously not featured much at all this season. He went to Spurs, he's not done much at all. So he might, whether or not he fancies the move now, if the terms are right for every party, but certainly it's an area of the pitch that needs addressed immediately. I think everyone could see that just now.
Sean, whether it's Joe Hart or someone else, do you agree?
I do agree that we need a keeper. I didn't think that they would go into the market in any way and get a keeper, since obviously Bargh came for decent money last year. So the fact that they are looking at that, I'm quite positive about whether it is Joe Hart or whether it's not. I would say Joe Hart, it did reach double figures in appearances for Spurs last year, albeit most of them I think were in the Cup. But I think the last full season he had was when he went to Torino in Italy. That said, when we signed Fraser Forster back again, he'd barely played for a year and a half, and that worked out fine. So I don't think with a keeper it's necessarily that big a deal breaker or anything if he's not playing.
I think there's an irony actually when you're going to open the league campaign tomorrow night at Tynecastle and come up against Craig Gordon. I think his exit was premature. I think this time last year or 13 months ago or whatever, I think the club really could have looked at keeping him for another year and coming into some kind of agreement, because he still had qualities that would have enhanced the team. I think he still had an ability there and a confidence of his colleagues. I think when you go back and ruminate on everything that went wrong going into last season, I think that's one of the decisions that you think it could leave you scratching your head.
I think Celtic signing Craig Gordon back in the day kind of points to the fact as well that you don't need a goalkeeper to be coming in who's played every minute of every season leading up to that, because he had a nightmare with injuries, came in and was excellent for Celtic. Joe Hart hasn't had a nightmare with injuries, but he's just not been first choice at Tottenham. He did have, Sean, I don't think he was first choice, but he did play a fair amount at West Ham on loan, and also had a decent run at Burnley before that. He played 19 Premier League games for both of them before he went to Tottenham from Man City. And then, yeah, you're right, Torino, he played every fixture in the league when he was on loan in Italy. So it's not like Joe Hart has been warming the bench for years and years on end. He has been playing football, and Sean's quite right to say that he did play 10 times for Spurs last season, so he's not frozen in ice or anything.
No, I mean, you were saying, I think was the Burnley one, I realise it's not really his fault, but the Burnley one was because I think Nick Pope got injured, which is why he got in. But to be fair to him, it was like half a season's worth of games that he ended up playing. So no, you're right with that, yeah.
Yeah. I think Nick Pope, their number one keeper. I mean, he probably was one of the ones that took Joe Hart's gloves at England, to be honest. I mean, Hart's not been capped now in about 3.5-4 years, but he does have 75 England caps, so it's a really good pedigree that Joe Hart comes with. A couple of Premier League titles, and I wouldn't say concerning, but I find it confusing a wee bit that it's almost seen the way that I've seen some Celtic fans talking on Twitter as a bit of a banter signing, or oh my God, Joe Hart's coming up here for Celtic. I think people are quick to forget what he has achieved and what he's capable of, Alison.
I think he has huge experience which he would bring to the club, but I think that aside, and I don't speak here from any level of personal experience, but I think he comes across as fairly confident and self-assured in his own ability, and I think that's almost what Celtic are crying out for just now, is a personality to go in and command that area of the pitch, to basically be in control of what's going on within his box. I think one of the criticisms of Bargh has been that he's maybe too quiet, that he's not shown that kind of level of charisma, almost, of coming in and just dominating that 6-yard box. And I think you need to have some kind of confidence to do that. I think there's maybe many reasons why Bargh felt a bit intimidated going in, and we all know the circumstances around his arrival and everything that was going on around the world at the time when he came in, and the restrictions that were in place, which probably made it quite difficult to assimilate into a new squad and a new team. But I think Hart, there's no real cultural differences. He brings masses of experience, and he brings a level of assurance, I think, that could certainly help Celtic.
I think, Sean, that it was quite quickly apparent that Pep Guardiola wasn't having Joe Hart when he went to Man City, and Claudio Bravo was brought in, and then Ederson, because he wanted a goalkeeper that could play out from the back and play with his feet. From what we understand, that's part of the remit in Ange Postecoglou's Celtic team, for the goalkeeper to be comfortable with his defenders and going short. So in that sense, is this a signing that makes sense? Should Celtic be looking at a different goalkeeper here?
I don't necessarily think he was bad with the ball at his feet for a goalkeeper. He just wasn't quite up to the Pep kind of standards. Like, Bravo was brought in almost because he was almost better with the ball at his feet than he was at shot stopping. And I've said before, I still think that certainly for a Celtic keeper, whether you want to play with a certain style, where the keeper joins in with the build-up play or not, you still need to be able to make the saves when called upon. And right now, Bargh certainly, I don't think many people have got the confidence that he will, and Bain isn't far behind them. So in that respect, I think he would be an upgrade on those regardless.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, so we'll move on to the striking department. Odsonne Edouard, it was rumoured that it would be his final game against Midtjylland. I don't think he really went out with a bang if that was the case, but Brighton haven't made their move yet, seemingly, if that's the club that he's going to go to. So does he start against Hearts tomorrow, Alison?
I think he probably does, purely because there's a lack of other options there at the minute. I think if he's at the club, I think he owes the club to play. He's paid to go out and play. I think he looks very much as though he's playing within himself. I think there's an element of being cautious to his play. I think maybe at the back of his mind, he's thinking that he doesn't want to put his body on the line in case it should jeopardise anything that might come to pass in the next few weeks. But I think he owes Celtic while he's at the club. I think if he's selected to play, then you would like to think he goes out and does a professional job and helps the club, because the club have been as good to him as he has been to them. So it's time to just focus and concentrate and allow what comes in the next few weeks. But I think if he's at the club, he needs to get his head down and just get on with it.
Sean, are you of similar opinion, or do you think if he's not got a future at Celtic and he wants out, then play someone who will be there?
No, I think he will. I think he will play, assuming nothing happens later today. What I would say is, I was saying pretty similar things to what Alison just said there about the Midtjylland game, which we thought was going to be his last game, and he didn't really put in the kind of performance I was hoping for, to kind of sign off in style. So I don't know if it's a big ask to think he'll do it at Tynecastle, possibly, disappointingly as that is to say.
It remains to be seen if Albion Ajeti is going to be the long-term replacement. Celtic have been linked with a few strikers. The latest one is Jean-Kevin Augustin, who plays for Nantes at the moment. Came through at PSG, had a spell with Leipzig in Germany, on loan at Leeds. It didn't really work out for him. And Nantes paid $5 million for him last October. But he's only played 33 minutes of Ligue 1 action since then. So this is not a guy that's been firing on all cylinders and is looking to take the next step. If Celtic pick up him, it's somebody that's looking to resurrect their career. We don't really know all that much about him. He's not spent too much time over here, so it's maybe a touch myopic. But Alison, Is this something that would intrigue you?
Listen, I think between now and the end of the window that Celtic will be linked with numerous players. I think if you look at the squad just now, a conservative estimate would maybe say 6 new players are required, and I would include at least one striker in that, possibly 2. In fact, if Edouard goes, there's an argument you could go for 3, but that, I think we know that that's not going to happen. But I think what you'll see is all sorts of speculation, because I think the club are very actively looking to bring in other players, and I think anyone that's been scouted and that the club are identifying who can come in and do a job and add something to the team will intrigue people. However, I go back to the point we made earlier. I think it would have been sensible to have a head of recruitment, to have a focal point for who's in charge of recruitment coming in at the same time as the manager, to just organise that whole department and take charge of that side of things. But certainly I think just now Celtic maybe need to be looking at players that you can trust to come in and hit the ground running, who can come in and make an immediate contribution. I think maybe if you've only played 33 minutes of a league game, you're still looking at getting up to speed and finding your touch and getting match fitness. I'm not sure that that's quite what Celtic are looking for just now.
Sean, might we see a similar situation to what happened with Ajer and Starfelt, where Celtic will be getting a replacement sorted before Edouard goes?
I don't know if that would be the case. As Alison said there, it depends if you think it's going to be a direct replacement for Edouard, because you could argue that would be another striker onto the list rather than one directly replacing him. I mean, to be honest, the fact that we're linked to a guy who's only played half an hour as well, it kind of speaks to the decline of our scouting system, I would say. I suppose you could always say it depends how they do when they get in, but just so far it's just so underwhelming in general. Never mind the lack of urgency about the recruitment.
Okay, well, Edouard may well start against Hearts tomorrow. Someone else that might go straight into the team is Carl Starfelt. He's available. Does that mean, yes, Alison, he's in there?
I would fully expect him to start. I think he'll go straight in. I think if he's fit, he goes straight in. I think Dane Murray might be the player whose position he takes, which is slightly harsh. I think the boy's done very well. I think he's acquitted himself very well. I thought, if you were pointing any fingers on Wednesday night, I don't think he would be one that you would say was culpable for the result. I think he can be pleased with how he's performed, but I think I think they clearly need some experienced heads to go in. I think Welsh will stay in, and I think Starfelt will go straight into the team.
Well, Abada had a pretty good start in the first leg against Mitchell and Sean. Carl Starfelt might do the same against Hearts if he's thrown in tomorrow, and when Furuhashi is available, hopefully he can hit the ground running. So are you having Starfelt straight in against Hearts?
Yes, definitely. If he's fit, then, and which he says he will be, if he's called upon, he's fine to go. If he's fit, then yes, start him for me. Again, I agree with Alison. I don't think that's any reflection on Dane Murray, because I think, considering the circumstances, he's acquitted himself quite well. But if Starfelt's fit, put him in alongside Welsh. Tynecastle could be a real baptism of fire for him. But conversely, if he gets off to a good one there, it's a great platform for him to start his Celtic career from.
Yeah, as well at Tynecastle a couple of seasons ago, that's where Scott Sinclair was thrown in at the deep end and certainly hit the ground running. So, yeah, TFC 67 here is making a point just quickly saying that Nisbet and Doig are 2 players from Hibs that they wouldn't have to isolate as well, and they're familiar with the Scottish League. Postecoglou's been in the press saying that he's not just going to sign players that are already and playing in Scotland or England just to get around quarantine, because he wants to set the team up as best as he possibly can for the season and not just short-term fixes. Regardless of that, do you think that either of these boys at Hibs or even Ali McCann at St Johnstone are worth thinking about? Come to you, Alison.
Yeah, of course. I think if you're playing well and you're performing well against Celtic or in any in the league as a whole, I think you're always going to attract attention. I think Nisbet has looked very sharp. I thought he had a good campaign. I think he was a bit irked when he didn't get the move in January when there was a potential for him to move on. I think he is someone that the club could consider. But I would go back. I think you could probably still do with one more. Doig, I thought impressed. I think again, I think he had a very, very good season. But he's still quite raw too. I think Celtic could possibly be looking at a more experienced fullback for that role. Ali McCann's another thought. Ali McCann had a great season last year. I think he would definitely offer something. The danger is you bring in players like this and they become squad players and they get lost, as we've seen before in the past. I think what Celtic need just now are players that are reliable and that you're going to be looking to contribute on a first team level on a week in, week out basis.
I have to say, Sean, I think that Ali McCann deserves better than to become a squad player somewhere. I think he's a really, really good player. There's the neighbours, Alison, making their noise. Yeah,
apologies.
I think that Ali McCann he doesn't deserve to be a squad player somewhere. And St Johnstone, I think, have named a price of at least $2 million. And personally, I'm surprised nobody's paid that yet. I think he's an absolutely tremendous midfield player, a Northern Irish international now. And I'm stunned he's still at St Johnstone, whether it's Celtic or anyone else that's interested in him. But him or either of the boys at Hibs, Doig and Nisbet, especially Nisbet, who was angling for a move, as Alison said, back in January. Any of them tickle your fancy?
I agree with you. I think I'm surprised that nobody's really been seriously sniffing about Ali McCann after the season he had. But more than that, I do agree with Alison. I think there is a danger that you buy these players and they end up squad players, and rather than what we need right now, which is actually people that can come in and do it right away. Ali McCann, to be honest, as much as I think he is a good player, I don't necessarily know if he's the type of player that we need to recruit for the midfield either. I think we maybe need someone more to kind of compete / play alongside maybe in the harder games with Sorrow in that kind of position, rather than like the Cal McGregor, David Turnbull, Ryan Christie type in the middle. So from that respect, I don't know if Ali McCann would be very high up my list. Nisbet, I mean, I kind of spoke to Tony about him yesterday. I think he's a fabulous player, certainly for the Scottish game. Whether he could adapt to the likes of Ange's style, what he wants from a central striker, I'm not sure, but could it be worth a punt, certainly?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that these links will crack on until deadline day, as what usually happens with Celtic. Somebody will pop up. It was Armstrong and Mackay-Steven before, it was Turnbull. I mean, these things tend to go right to the wire. So, yeah, thanks for joining and watching on the Celtic briefing, and see you again next time.